and welcome to the Royal Festival Hall and this exploration of Haydn's Symphony No. 101, Movement to the Clock. My name is Rachel and I'll guide you through the movement before we'll hear a full performance of it given by the London Philharmonic Orchestra and their conductor Tim Murray. But first, a bit of background to the composer. Franz Joseph Haydn is known as the father of classical music because he pretty much invented all the major musical shapes. So the symphony, the concerto and the sonata. He was born in 1732 and spent his whole adult life working within an extremely rich musical family that allowed him to innovate. At this time, the orchestra had grown to have a large string section, up to 2 of each woodwind instrument, 2 horns, 2 trumpets and timpani. And this is the typical classical-sized orchestra. A symphony is a piece for orchestra that divides up into 4 movements. Haydn wrote his 101st symphony during a visit to London, where he was very, very famous. And it's called the clock because of the ticking sound that is present throughout the second movement. Haydn wouldn't have called it that himself. It was probably given that nickname by a critic to tell it apart from all of his other symphonies. You'll hear the ticking at the very beginning, played by the second violins, cellos and basses. They're playing pizzicato, so they're plucking their strings, and also the bassoons who have short staccato notes. As you listen to the full movement in a while, listen out for that ticking, which is almost always there. At the beginning, it establishes the key of G major. There's one tune on top, which divides into 2 phrases. I'm going to call the first phrase Theme A. Here it is. That tune features a double dotted jerky rhythm, which helps it to stand out from the ticking accompaniment underneath. During theme A, we move from the home key of G major to the dominant of D and back home again. After that, we have theme B. This also has a dotted rhythm and the ticking sound, and it sounds like this. The ticking was still there, but it was split between some quiet second violins and rather louder, angrier cellos and basses. There was also a sequence during that section. Sequence is the term we use for when an idea is repeated but starting on a higher or lower pitch. And there was an inverted pedal. So pedal is the word we use for a long note placed at the bottom of the texture. But here we had an inverted pedal. That just means it's a long note placed at the top and it's played by the oboe. So let's listen again to the middle of theme B. Theme A then returns, but it's slightly different. The flute is doubling the melody and the violas have triple stopped chords. And there's a slight change to the tune as it approaches its end. So the main section has got 2 themes, theme A, then theme B, and then we return to theme A again. Next, we have a contrasting section, which is dark and dramatic, and the timpani and brass enter for the first time. This whole section is based on one little idea from bar 4. Suddenly, that bar has become this. This stormy passage lasts around 30 bars, and Haydn uses dotted rhythms to pass through some different keys before returning back to the home key of G major and the opening ideas from section A. So if we call the ABA theme we heard at the beginning section A, and this dark and stormy passage section B, because we return to section A again, we could say that the structure of the whole piece is extended ternary form. You can, however, analyse this piece as being a set of theme and variations, rondo form, or even sonata form. And all of these ideas are correct, but we're going to continue with extended ternary form. So let's look at the A2 section now, when Haydn returns to his ideas from the beginning, but with a difference. The start of this section uses the same material as the opening A section, but it's now very quiet, and there's just a solo flute and bassoon on the ticking. We hear this material again after a bar of silence, and it's in the slightly strange key of E flat, and at this point we only hear theme A. Then we return to the home key of G and the fullest version of the theme so far. The orchestra are playing forte or loud. There's a new triplet accompaniment introduced on the second violins, which gradually takes over the texture. And the triplets are there to move the music forward. Then theme A returns for the final time in its most stately and grandest version. The orchestra at this point are marked FF fortissimo, very loud. There's a coda on the end. Coda just means ending, and Haydn rounds off his piece in the home key of G major with a couple of scales and a perfect cadence. So here's a full performance of the movement without the repeats from the London Philharmonic Orchestra and their conductor, Tim Murray. Listen out for that ticking idea because it's there almost all the way through.